Hello, everybody. All right. Welcome to the Mikestand, everybody. Today is, of course, Tuesday, May the 6th, 2024, or 2025. Hope everybody's having a good day, a good week thus far. Hopefully, everybody's having a productive week. I know there are some parts of the country, like here where I'm at in Southern California, I have been experiencing some, maybe some lower temperatures a little cooler weather, more overcast. But hey, you know summer is right around the corner, right? So everybody's looking forward to beach weather coming up in a few weeks here. So, anyways, as we wait for our people to show up before I get started, of course, if you guys can help out by liking and sharing the stream, see if we can get some more friendly people to engage, it would be appreciated. Also, if anything here grabs your attention, feel free to comment and or ask questions. I'll try to answer the questions to the best of my ability. Anyways, yeah, so let's see now. Hmm. Hmm. Anyways, as we again wait for more people to show up, la 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 la. La 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 la. Oh, Smurf music there. Let's see. See if I can. Popeye the Sailor Man. I'm Popeye the Sailor Man. I'm strong to the finish 'cause I eat my spinach. Popeye the Sailor Man. All right, well we're coming up on 4 minutes now, so I guess I should talk about what's on tap for tonight. So for tonight, what we're going to be doing, of course, is we're gonna be going over a couple articles from Bounding into Comics. One talking about the Legend of Aang, the latest Last Airbender series, in which it's been confirmed that the original VAs were recast in order to, quote, match actors' ethnic racial background to the characters. They're still going with the woke aspect of trying to, feeling that the voices have to match you know, the characters or the actual on character screen. And then we're also going to be looking at another one talking about C2E2 2025. Indie creators, veterans, and living legends alike flooded the artist alley at C2E2. So we're going to be looking at all that. Plus, of course, we'll have the wrestling wrap up along with with the wrestling wrap up. Of course, we will look back to last night's Monday Night Raw as the final of the 5th matches was announced for Backlash. And then we'll look ahead to tonight's NXT, of course. We'll look ahead to see what's going on with NXT tonight. What to look forward to as they prepare for their pay-per-view coming up in a few weeks, Battleground. It's also been announced that, of course, on the 24th, I believe, WWE will have a Saturday night's main event as well. We'll get caught up on some AEW news as well, and then we'll, of course, finish things off with This Day in Each History. Amazing. Yeah, that will help things out a little bit. All right. So anyways, so I guess it would be a good time now to basically let's get started on the material at hand. As I said, if you guys haven't already, if you guys can help out by liking and sharing the stream so we can get some more friendly people in here to engage, that'd be appreciated. Also, if anything here grabs your attention, feel free to comment and or ask questions. I'll try to answer the questions to the best of my ability. With all that being said, of course, let's get going here. All right, so The Legend of Aang, The Last Airbender, confirms original VAs were recast in order to, quote, match actors' ethnic racial background to the characters, unquote. Article by Spencer McCauley, published back on May 2nd, which was, I believe, last Friday. All right, so let's get into this then. When the news broke that the upcoming Avatar The Last Airbender sequel film, The Legend of Aang, The Last Airbender, had declined to bring back the series' original voice cast, instead choose to wholesale replace them, many fans were left scratching their head as to what possible reason could have motivated the bizarre decision. And thanks to casting director Jenny Ju, we now know that the reason was, unsurprisingly, identity okay, so basically, I see. Okay, the way they, all right, I understand now. In other words, the original VAs were the one who were not the ones who were cast based on their, their racial identity. They were just cast, and they actually got rid of the original VAs to put in a whole new cast. Okay, now I understand what they were saying there. All right. So, anyways, first announced as in production in February 2021, like 4 years ago, under the supervision of original series creators Michael Dante DiMartino and Brian Konietzko via Paramount's then newly established Avatar Studios, with the pair's return to the animated series prompted by their dissatisfaction with the experience working on Netflix's live-action series. The Legend of Aang, The Last Airbender, will serve as the first of 3 movies that will explore Aang and company's adulthood adventures following the defeat of Fire Lord Ozai. However, despite picking back up where the series left off, the film, as noted above, will not be bringing back the original voice cast for the main Gong, despite all of them being still alive and most still working, but instead replacing them with a brand new voice cast. Let's see. Zuko Jack Deshawn is unimpressed with the Gong's live action depiction in Avatar Last Airbender Book 3, Fire Episode number 17, The Emblem Island Players. All right, so let's see now. At current, the confirmed voice cast for The Legend of Aang includes Korean singer Eric Nam as Aang, taking over from Zach Tyler Eisen, Jessica Matten as Katara, taking over for Mae Whitman, Roman Zaragoza as Sokka, taking over for Jack DeCina, and Dion Kwan, herself a blind woman, as Toph, taking over from Jessica Flower. In parentheses, it should be noted that there does currently exist a rumor that Zuko's original VA, Dante Bosco, will be reprising his role as the Firebender, but this has yet to be confirmed by an official source. End parentheses. To this end, in the 2 years since this primary casting was announced, Paramount Pictures and Avatar Studios have remained completely radio silent as to the behind-the-scenes decisions that led to this VA shakeup. However, thanks to the aforementioned Jew, fans finally have their answer. Jew, whose thus far 17-year-long industry career has served as the casting director for such projects as Inglourious Bastards, The Brother's Son, and the live-action Avatar: The Last Airbender series, confirmed this production detail during a recent Ask Me Anything session held with the, Reddit community. Asked directly by a user if there was, quote, is there, unquote, any reason why you guys decided not to bring the original cast back for the ultimate nostalgia trip? The casting director asserted, quote, since the original show was released, there's been more emphasis in voiceover to match actors' ethnic racial background to the characters they're portraying, unquote. The thing is, though, as we've mentioned before, anytime we've talked about this situation, I don't think most fans are really thinking about too much whether or not the person portraying the voice or doing the voice is the same racial or ethnic background as the character. I mean, it's acting, for crying out loud. The whole point of it is to be somebody else. Okay. Oh boy. That's a very basic thing. That seems to be a very basic thing that current Hollywood seems to have forgotten. The whole concept of acting is based on being somebody you're not. It's like portraying a character. Okay? That's a very core thing with acting. you're not supposed to be, you know, you know, you're not necessarily supposed to be it's not exactly something that absolutely needs to be 1-to-1. Okay, it doesn't need to be like a 1-to-1 ratio. Okay, I mean, in a way, I would even almost argue that if you're casting a voice to fit like a racial or ethnic background, I would almost say that's racist. You know, that would seem to me. I mean, that I think is the very basic definition of what racism is. You know, or any kind of ism for that matter. Yes, it is true that to that ism is to put down one group over another, but it's also just as much of an ism to put one group over another, you know. So, but the very essence of acting is the idea of portraying a character, basically playing something that you're not, you know. Whether or not the person voicing the character is white, black, Asian, Hispanic, European, polka dotted, crater face, what have you. They can deliver the lines, and they can, and their voice is believable to how the character is designed. Then what race or ethnicity they are really shouldn't matter. Um, I mean, considering that for like the past 60 years, right? Whenever animes have come to America, going all the way back to the early 60s with like Astro Boy and Kimba and Gigantor and Kimba the White Lion, all the way up through well into the 2000s. Whenever it was time to, whenever they wanted to market it to America and they wanted to dub it into English, a lot of the voice actors were white, and nobody throughout for the past 60 plus years, nobody was really even remotely thought about whether or not the person voicing the character was actually Japanese. I don't think anybody made that big of a deal out of it. But yet now all of a sudden in the last 5 years here, now we have to make a big deal out of it? Really? Kind of silly if you ask me, but and as I said, what they're doing here is just as racist as the racism they're claiming to decry. So, quote, Avatar The Last Airbender is a fictional world, but there are cultural influences for each nation kingdom. And we wanted to explore the talent from those groups. Parenthesis there. She added, quote, I can't say much more about the film, except that I'm really proud of this cast, and I hope the other fans keep an open mind to this new iteration of our beloved characters, unquote. Well, if you had done so at the very beginning, either if you'd done so at the very beginning of the whole series, or if it wasn't so apropos now for modern day Hollywood to try to fit a narrative or whatever, I don't think people would have a problem with keeping an open mind. But the whole fact that you're doing this to like stick it to people and try to make a point, that's what's gonna kind of set people off about it. At present, the Legend of Aang: The Last Airbender is looking to start flexing its theatrical bending skills on January 30th, 2026. So early next year, basically. All right. So as I said, if anything here grabs your attention, feel free to comment and or ask questions. I'll try to answer the questions to the best of my ability. So with that, let's go ahead and get ready to move on to the next article here. What we're going to do here. Try this again. All right, there we go with that. This is probably more from the comics room, as it were. All right, so indie creators, veterans, and living legends alike flooded the artist alley at C2E2 2025 article by Dante Eriks. And it was published back on May 3rd, 2025, which of course was this past Saturday. They have a poster of Tony S. Daniel in the background. So Tony Daniel, I believe, is a Canadian voice actor. I know he did. I think if it's the same guy I'm thinking of, I think he was the second voice of Gambit back on the X-Men the animated series and back in the 90s. So. Well, they're saying S, so it might not be the same guy, but I'm thinking of. But anyways, for anyone who has never traversed the aisles of Artist Alley at C2E2, it's a lot like going to a Black Friday sale at any large corporate retailer around the country as soon as Thanksgiving dinner ends. Along with trying to maneuver their parking lots, the difference is that most of the people crammed shoulder to shoulder in the former aren't buying anything as they clog the congested lanes for one of the most sinister versions of red light, green light ever concocted. And nobody is pointing barrels at each other over the last Funko Pop. I'm hoping they're not saying barrels of a gun. Not meaning that. I hope people aren't going that crazy. Uh. So anyways, as we continue on here, this mere section of the showroom at McCormick Place comprises 26 lanes marked A to Z and runs the length of several yards but feels much longer when you're actually in them. On both sides of the rows of 6-foot tables with 6 feet of empty space separating them. Let's see. If there's more than one popular artist in that particular aisle, it's a devil of a time trying to get out of it. It is not for those who harbor little patience in their hearts or who have low tolerance for absent-minded lumps who slowly shamble through a throng of living folk while scanning everything with a blank stare that resembles a lost zombie. at catching faint echoes of its former life everywhere it looks. Oh boy, quite a dramatic prose there, my friend, Mr. Erics. Cynical critique aside, there's a reason that they all gather together and choose to endure the draining, sardine like experience. It gives them a chance to stand in the presence of comic book artists and writers whose skillful hands continue to shake the world of imagination to its core. They are the courageous souls who have tossed away the safety raft of the 9 to 5 world and sail the treacherous seas of consequences. Whether it's a talented newcomer or a legend who belongs on a couple of Mount Rushmores, walk down the right alley in C2E2, and you'll find just about anything. And if you guys haven't already, you guys can help out by liking and sharing the stream, see if we can get some more friendly people in here to engage. That'd be appreciated. Also, if anything here grabs your attention, feel free to comment and or ask questions. I'll try to answer the questions to the best of my ability. With that being said, let's continue on here. The first table brings the steamy artwork of the supremely talented Sora Sung. She entered the crazy world of comic book creating in 2007 as a contributing artist and has been working as a penciler and illustrator since 2016. Aside from drawing characters the hottest way possible, Sora has worked on Archie Holiday Special, Lady Death, Hell Witch, and La Muerta through Coffin Comics and Void Trip Image Comics, in parentheses there, to name a few, along with inking, design, and title designs for Marvel, with Iron Man The End, Iron Man Legacy of Doom, and Hercules Twilight of a God. Corin Howell is a self-proclaimed, quote, writer for anything spooky, scary, and sexy, unquote. That's an interesting combination, along with being one hell of an artist who has demonstrated her illustrating prowess with books like Transformers Distant Stars for IDW, Ghostbusters Answer the Call, also IDW, Dark Red Aftershock, and the eternally obnoxious fifth-dimensional imp Batmite for DC with Dan Jurgens in 2015. She is also the creator of the sexy demonic man-eater turned model Lilith from Vault Comics. Okay. Both artists can be found on all social media platforms, along with cruising the nationwide convention circuit. But the link to Sora's professional website is here, and the way to Corin's dark realm is right here, right there. All right. The rabbit hole only goes deeper while roaming the crowded corridor. Tim Seeley is a local writer-artist who has been hacking, slashing his way through comics for over 2 decades on mainstream titles such as Nightwing, Batman Eternal, and G.I. Joe. He's also the words guy on the amazing indie horror books Revival, and that other Image title starring my girlfriend Cassie and her companion Vlad. Moving on completely, Cuban illustrator Vanessa Del Rey has brought her gritty, atmospheric style to Marvel through Scarlet Witch, Spider-Woman Alpha, Daredevil Annual 2016. She's also co-creator with Jordi Belair on the book Redlands from Image Comics. Like many others who weave dark tales with haunting images, Del Rey is one of the more approachable, down-to-earth artists on the scene. Then there's the acclaimed cover artist, in parentheses, and incredibly extroverted, in parentheses, John Jung. Um, this man has run the gauntlet of Marvel, DC Comics, Paramount, Disney, Lucasfilm, and Hasbro. His works include Red Hulk, Batman vs. Robin, and Transformers. But it doesn't stop at comics with him. Jung also was also a concept artist for films like Iron Man 2, The Avengers, Pacific Rim, and Rogue One. It's enough to make any common nerd a little starstruck, but it pales in comparison to what awaits in the next aisle. An interesting article here in which they're just sitting there, just going through aisle to aisle. And that looks like a happy group right there as well. Comic book legends Klaus Janson, Chris Claremont, Wendy Pini, and Richard Pini. Indulge a nervous fanboy in Artist Alley. The great Klaus Janson has graced the comic world with his presence since the 1970s, and was at the penciler inker seat for classics from Detective Comics Annual with the immortal Bat Scribe Danny O'Neill to Punisher, Wolverine, and World War Hulk. However, most lifers recognize Janson from his collaborations with fellow legend Frank Miller. The first team-up was on Daredevil from 1975 to 83, which many, in parentheses, myself included, on parentheses, consider to be one of the greatest runs in comic book history. And the other is the 4-issue groundbreaking masterpiece, Batman Dark Knight Returns, 1986. If there's anything that can make a person freak out more after the brief exchange, it's coming across Chris Claremont's table without expecting it. This is the name that rings deep through the childhood of any comic book reader born in the last century, and few who were born into this current one. With responsible parents, the storytelling master has composed unforgettable tales in Wildcats, Covert Action Teams, Image, Iron Fist, Marvel, and one of my personal favorites from back in the early days, Aliens Predator, Deadliest of the Species, Dark Horse Comics. Parentheses there. But most remember him from his legendary 16-year run on Uncanny X-Men 1995 to 1991 that dwarfs Klaus and Frank's tenure with the Devil of Hell's Kitchen. And it led Marvel through their most creatively affluent period of the 1980s with Jim Shooter as top editor. Now, Chris Claremont, for those of you who probably remember watching like the X-Men cartoons of the early 90s there, the X-Men animated series, his name would show up a lot as the storyteller for a lot of those, as a story writer for a lot of those story arcs too. So, because I think it was from his works that those stories were actually adapted from. As friendly as the last two people were, they have nothing on the warm air of welcome that drifted from Wendy and Richard Peeney's table. Husband and wife team first met when Richard read one of Wendy's letters that had been published, in parentheses, along with her address, in the 1969 issue of Silver Surfer. They started corresponding, fell in love, maintained a 4-year relationship that was mostly phone based, but with one IRL visit a year that led to them eventually getting married. And that's adorable, even if people try denying it. Yeah, it's kind of the storybook love story, right? Right there. Two strangers passing in the night and they fall in love and make a life together. It is also half the story. The newlyweds would go on to create the amazing fantasy epic ElfQuest in 1978. The book was published through their own company, Warp Graphics, and I get it, Wendy and Richard Peeney Graphics, and it still continues to this day, along with being one of the most beloved comic book series of the genre. Based on the name, I would think it was kind of a sword and sorcery type comic book. It can be a little overwhelming to stand before those whose names reach back to a time when reading was still a new thing. To actually hear the words of someone who has helped shape the imagination of generations with their actions and to interact with them. It's something that can elevate a person, or at least until the best parts of their adolescence pull up and bring them back down to earth with a simple hand gesture. All right, so there we go with that. So that's all for the articles we have tonight. Let's see. And I believe I'm making good time, or at least for the time I'm trying to make here. Let's see now. So, with that, now we'll get ready to move on to the wrestling wrap up. Um, First, let me talk a little bit about an AEW story. Mercedes Moné, who some people might remember as Sasha Banks in WWE, has been embroiled in a bit of controversy recently. In which now some people aren't sure if this was her idea or her people's idea, but apparently there are people who are feeling that she's trying to scam people with this idea of by trying to get them to pay $99.99 a month to become personal text buddies with her. With a promise of being able to text Mercedes, with your phone. All you have to do is pay $100 a month, $1,200 a year. Yeah, that's got a lot of people upset, including many of our fans. And it's also come out that it's not entirely true. It's not necessarily, you don't actually get a personal text message from Mercedes doing this. It's apparently anything, as one commentator put it, apparently it's more the idea of being on a glorified mailing list. You get to be on a glorified mailing list where you can get a text from her, supposedly from her personally, which some people are saying that is not necessarily the case. It's looked at as being a scam. Basically, I'm just gonna stop right there because I could say something that would be a little bit risque here, but I'm not going to. I'm gonna be nice here, and I'm not going to further that thought. So, anyways, so with that piece of news out of the way, and aside from some other things too, we're talking about, of course, yesterday the releases that happened in the WWE. Well, apparently, Elena Black, the formerly known in the WWE as Cora Jade, has apparently started up an OnlyFans account now that she's left the WWE. So there's something for her. So that's something to be of some interest to. So now, with all that being said, let's get into the more WWE news. We look back to last night's Raw. Last night's Raw was the go home Raw, and it was overall considered a pretty good Raw, just with the exception of the fact that a lot of people were critical of the fact that John Cena and Randy Orton were not there on the show, which was a bit disappointing. But other than that, there was still a lot of good build for the show. So the opening match saw Penta defeat JD McDonough in a one-on-one match, despite the attempts at interference by other members of the Judgment Day before the referee kicked out both Carlito and Finn Balor. And then even El Grande Americano even came in and tried to interfere, only for Penta to get the finish on JD McDonough with the front flip pile driver, people know as the Destroyer. Of course, since he's Mexican, they call it the Mexican Destroyer, originated by P.D. Williams as the Canadian Destroyer. But this also, of course, is feeding it, building towards Penta's upcoming match with Dominic Mysterio this Saturday at Backlash for the Intercontinental title. Making his return to Raw, Sheamus came back and defeated Austin Theory as they continue to tease the idea of A-Town Down Under breaking up, as Grayson Waller was, I guess, the person who kind of set up the match. But I just had to check and thought it. But Sheamus makes his triumphant return to defeat Austin Theory in just over 9.5 minutes. In a non-title match, Women's World Champion Io Sky defeated Roxanne Perez in a singles match. After the match, Roxanne seemed to be trying to show Io some respect by offering her hand as a handshake. Apparently, it seemed like it was done, but then once, as Roxanne was leaving the ring, and of course and Io was praising her for that, Julie attacked her from behind, in which Io was basically double teamed by Roxanne and Io Sky, and with, of course, Rhea Ripley apparently back home in Australia right now. Io Sky had no backup for last night. In his first official match since re-signing with the WWE, Rusev defeated Otis after, of course, attacking him last week of Alpha Academy, only for Akira Tozawa to get up in Rusev's face. Rusev eventually beat them both down. And the main event saw Seth Rollins defeat Jey Uso via DQ, as CM Punk came in and interfered in the match. After Braun Breaker had been interfering in the match. Sami Zayn came out to try to combat him. But then after they took out Sammy, as Jey Uso tried to help Sammy up, Braun Breaker speared him, and then which eventually led to CM Punk coming out and attacking Seth Rollins with a chair, giving Seth Rollins the win, albeit not the title. It was a match for the WWE World Heavyweight title, but that's about it. So now to look ahead to tonight's NXT, since I grabbed that. Looking on, of course, last night Pat McAfee had a confrontation with Gunther as well to challenge, in his upcoming match this Saturday Backlash. But anyways, for tonight's NXT coming from the WWE Performance Center in Orlando, Florida. In a 6-man tag match, the newly crowned NXT Tag Team Champions Hank and Tank of Tank Ledger and Hank Walker, teaming up with TNA World Champion Joe Hendry to face the Dark Side trio of Dark State faction. As of yet, which 3 members has not been decided. Zarya takes on Kalani Jordan in a one-on-one women's match. In a number 1 contenders match for the NXT Women's title, Jordan Grace will be taking on Julia. And then in the number 1 contendership battle royal for the NXT title, you'll see, among others, Shawn Spears, Timothy Thatcher, Ethan Page, Charlie Dempsey, Wes Lee, Josh Briggs, Ridge Holland, Lexis King, Yoshiki Inamura, Sean Legacy, Brooks Jensen, Trick Williams, Ricky Smokes, Miles Bourne, Tavian Heights, Javon Evans, Tyson DuPont, Tyreek Igwe, Brad Baylor, Nico Vance, Shiloh Hill, Chris Island, and 3 others. 3 to be announced tonight. So that's all going down on tonight's NXT. So with that being said, that's all I got for the wrestling wrap-up tonight. So now we'll prepare to wrap things up, as well, with today being Tuesday, May the 6th, 2025. Let's take a look back at this day in each history. So, first off, the first thing we're going to do is we're going to go back 25 years. So on this date, back in the year 2000, WWE held its Insurrection pay-per-view from Earl's Court in London, England. Of course, one of the many times WWE's gone over to England for events. The main event saw The Rock retain the WWF Championship over Shane McMahon and Triple H, a triple threat match. Eddie Guerrero retained the WWE European Championship over Chris Jericho. The Hardy Boys defeated Edge and Christian in a WWF tag team by disqualification. The British Bulldog, Davey Boy Smith, defeated Crash Holly to become the new Continental Champion. The Sho and Rikishi defeated the Dudley Boys in a tag match. An arm wrestling match, the Cat with Mae Young seconding her defeated Terry Runnels, who was seconded by the Fabulous Moolah. And the show opened up with Too Cool of Grandmaster Sexay and Scotty 2 Hotty defeating the Radicals members Dean Malenko and Perry Saturn. That all happened back in 2000. Now as we move ahead to the year 2005, 20 years ago today, on this date, oops, no, that's not what I wanted to do. On this date, 20 years ago today, back in 2005. SpongeBob SquarePants returns after a 7-month hiatus with a 4th season premiere. So, after a 7-month hiatus, SpongeBob SquarePants had its 4th season premiere on this date back in 2005, 20 years ago today. So now, as we get ready to move on to the last piece of niche history, we now move on to 2015. On this day, 10 years ago today, in 2015, the 10th issue of Wicked and the Divine from Image Comics went on sale on its date back in 2015. It sold for $350, $32. So this book apparently ran for quite a bit of time. I think it ran for 40 issues, from what I understand. On this date back in 2015, the 10th issue of Wicked and the Divine premiered on this date. Went on sale on this date 10 years ago in 2015. So with that being said, I hope everybody enjoyed the show tonight. We'll be back here with more niche news tomorrow. And don't forget, this Sunday, I'll have Rick Piper from Cross Comics joining me as we look back to comics went on sale in May of 1940. This week, we'll be focusing in on Fox Comics. We'll be reading such features as Samson, The Flame, Green Mask, and Voodoo Men. So with that, I thank everybody for being here, and I hope to see everybody back here tomorrow. Bye.